Hi, welcome back. You will not be seeing this for quite a while, but I've had a video that I've been thinking about doing. I thought it would be really interesting to go back and reread some of my favorite books from when I was a teenager. It was a long time ago. I'm 31 now. As a grown adult woman who is married with children in a very different part of life with a very different worldview, I would say, from what I had as a teenager, I thought it would be really interesting to go back and reread some of these books. One of the books that I had in mind for this recently went up on Book Outlet, and then I'll take you with me to try to find copies of some of the other books that I remember being some of my favorites. So the first book by Lurlene McDanial, who, guys, I went through a phase where I was really into her books, and I mean, they're basically YA ciclet. I don't know why. Like, this is not something I would probably choose to pick up now, but I was so into them. They're all about teenagers with cancer or other terminal illnesses who fall in love with each other, and then like frequently one or both of them will die at the end of the book. And I can remember being in my room late at night finishing these books and just like sobbing, which is so funny because I rarely cry reading books now. But one of her books recently went up that I know I read. It's called Don't Die My Love. Like, can we appreciate the melodrama of the title? I have that in order. I also don't think I'm gonna have a chance to read all of these books super soon, so this is gonna be a video that I will be working on for a while. I was also very into Christian romance, one of the big ones being Wick. There are a few books of hers that I would read and reread a lot. So this is gonna be me going back and rereading the books that I thought were really romantic when I was a teenager, and see how I feel about them today. This is gonna be interesting, guys. She's written a ton of Christian romance stuff. I've not read it. Oh, yep, here we go. This is one, The Hawk and the Jewel. This was one of my favorites. This whole series, guys, I was super into it. It was historical romance. I wonder if I can find them used. Okay, you know what? I don't really mind the condition. Let's see if we can find a used copy. We're gonna go with the $6 very good copy. I was just really into all of these. The Kensington Chronicles, I read them so many times. Oh, there's book 2, The Knight and the Dove. Oh my gosh. The Princess. This was another one of my favorites where like the prince, his wife had died and he was heartbroken, but he had to marry somebody to have an heir. So the other Christian romance author that I was really into was Linda Chaiken. She wrote these more exotic romances. Trilogy in Egypt. She had all these different ones about like pirates and buccaneers and romance, and I was all about it. Oh, it was the Heart of India trilogy. Okay, yeah. Which, like, in hindsight, right, it's like these white characters in India. It's like super colonialist. Oh, there's gonna be so many problems with this, but yeah, I was really into this trilogy. Okay, so we're gonna see if we can get this. Go ahead and get the good copy for $5. These are the people I read a lot of. If you guys don't know, it's a thing. There's no sex, but lots of romance, and I had a phase where I was really into it. That looks pretty good to me, and that's like $20 worth of books. Plus I got the Lurlene McDanial one for like $3 on Book Outlet. It's gonna be interesting. I mean, I know, like, I can remember enough to know that there are gonna be major probably gonna be a lot of problematic content in these books, but I have a feeling I also might still enjoy the process of reading them, so we're just gonna see how this goes. I'll probably read them a little more critically than I did as a teenager, but I'm kind of excited. I think it's gonna be fun. I'm probably least excited about the like ciclet Don't Die My Love book because I'm just like so not into that anymore, but I'm kind of excited to read these other ones. I think it's gonna be fun. Good morning, guys. So I'm doing my makeup. I'm gonna be filming today and watching some booktube. We've got Harriet Rosie. I realized that I had left off a pretty big romance author that I was into back in the day. Francine Rivers is also a giant in Christian romance and women's fiction. And I was a big fan of hers as well, and I don't know how I forgot about her. So I went ahead and purchased Redeeming Love, which I know I read at least twice when I was a teenager, and it's been a lot of years, and it's still, I think, a fairly popular book. So I'm adding that to the list. This TBR is growing. It's gonna be like 6 books, but I'm excited about it. I am hopeful that maybe Redeeming Love will be less of a problematic book, but I guess we will see. First package arrived a little bit faster than I was even anticipating. The Hawk and the Jewel by Wick. And it's in really good condition. Do you love the like 90s covers? The next book came in. I have Silk by Linda Chaiken. Guys, these covers. Some more of the books arrived. I'm only missing one now in my book outlet order. I got Don't Die My Love by Lurlene McDanial. The Night and the Dove by Lori Wick. This is the other book in the Kensington Chronicles. Again, like, can we just appreciate all these crazy 90s covers? My third Lori Wick book for the project is The Princess. I am only waiting for Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers, and then I will have all 6 books. So now I gotta figure out where I'm gonna fit these into my TBR, guys. Hey guys, so it's been like a month since I updated you. We've all been sick. I'm sick right now, which is part of why I'm finally picking up one of these books. We've had some like viruses affecting breathing. It's been a month, but I'm finally picking up one of these books, and I just needed something cozy and that I thought was gonna be good and fun. So I'm starting The Princess by Lori Wick because it's exactly what I need right now. I'm not feeling the best, and from what I remember, this was just like a wonderful cozy romance. So yeah, that's what we're doing. It is December 17th, so this month has been crazy, but we're going. We are reading these books. I just read the prologue, and it's kind of funny, guys. I had forgotten how, like, overt the religiosity in some of these can be. Like, the prologue is from the perspective of our main character's mother as she's, like, praying for her children and stuff, and it's a little, I mean, it's a little much, so, but, you know, whatever, it's fine. This was published in 1999, so it's been a long. So I'm not even that far in. I'm like 27 pages in, and wow, I have a lot of thoughts. I had forgotten what this stuff was like. So this book is basically about an arranged marriage, like parents arrange a marriage between their son and daughter. The son is the prince who has been grieving the death of his first wife for years and doesn't want to have to deal with dating or courting anybody. Asks his parents to find a wife for him. It does feel very dated. Parents are super involved, which I guess is, you know, it's fine, but like the girl Shelby, I feel like, is sort of the perfect virginal Christian young woman. And like, it's funny because I think it's an ideal that I thought that I needed to live up to. She's very sweet, like very sweet, and does everything perfectly. She hasn't really been interested in dating anyone, and she lives at home with her parents, and she works at a hospital, and she's just like, you know, goes along with things. It's funny because I think this was sort of like the ideal, right? And then there was this line where I just had to stop and read this, like, she's talking to her parents about the possibility of this arranged marriage. Like, is it okay to marry him because I just want to take care of him? And her father says, arranged marriages used to be common. Now, if you're still not living as husband and wife 2 years after you're married, I'll be wondering why. When two people spend time together, they become attracted to each other. Oh, okay. If you spend time together, you're going to be attracted to each other. So it'll be really weird if you're not sleeping together within 2 years of being married to each other. I'm like, oh my gosh. Guys, anyway, this is gonna be interesting. Very young marriages, but like with people that aren't dating, and it's just it brings me back to, like, I grew up in a very conservative religious household and environment, and you know, for those of you who know, like, the whole I kiss dating goodbye courtship thing was a deal when I was a teenager. And I can just see how, like, stuff like this is woven in here, and these ideas about what relationships should be like and what women should be like, and I thought this was like the most romantic thing. In some ways, I like the idea, right, of like an arranged marriage where they eventually fall for each other, but I think some of the specifics of the way it's done, I'm a little like, I don't know so much anymore. Anyway, it's interesting. Okay, so she's moving into the palace, getting ready for the wedding, and they put her in the rooms of his old wife, like the former princess, and they're black, and she hates black, but she's gonna live with it because it was his wife. I'm like, first of all, like, really? Would somebody have black rooms in a palace? That seems so weird, and like, I don't know, it's just a weird thing. And of course, guys, her wedding dress is high-necked and long-sleeved with a thick veil, because, you know, modesty, I guess. She's I don't know. I hope that she shows more of a backbone as we get further into this, but like, if I'm remembering correctly, I think she kind of lets the prince just be like a jerk to her for a while. Why did I love this so much? Like, why did I think this was so romantic? I did. I really did. It's interesting. Anyway, all right, I'm gonna keep reading. Oh my god, you guys, it just like keeps going. Her mom is talking to her before the wedding, and she says, I guess because I'm a woman and women tend to be emotional. Like, all the worst stereotypes of like what women are and should be. Like, oh, guys, it's so bad. I'm on page 48. They're married. He still hasn't even like seen her in person because he just couldn't. So she's just like, you know, getting into her life as the princess in the palace. We're getting a lot of passages about like prayer and her reading the Bible and her going to church and stuff, and I'm like, I mean, I don't know, it's a little bit much. I go to church where people of faith and stuff, I just like, it's so heavy-handed, you guys, like so heavy-handed. It's probably the era though, I guess, but I feel like, I don't know, it feels like pretty frequent. All right, I'm gonna have some chamomile tea. Oh, I had forgotten the parts where it does get pretty entertaining. Because she was wearing a thick veil, the prince never saw her face, and so it's kind of funny because there's a moment where she's eating breakfast in the palace kitchens, and he walks in and says hi to her and introduces himself, not realizing it's his wife, and it's like super awkward. But kind of entertaining. So now they're finally gonna start talking to each other, and yeah, I'm on page 54. Guys, Nikolai is being such a jerk. And I think it's because she's like super sweet and his dead wife, Yvette, if I remember correctly, was like the opposite. He keeps comparing them and like, he's being such a jerk to her and she's like nothing but sweet. Like, I kind of wish she would do something though. Well, at least he realized he'd been a jerk and freaked his wife out and apologized, so points to him for not being a completely jerky alpha male. I'm kind of enjoying this though, it's fun. I'm remembering some of the stuff I like about it. I think I'm gonna have more mixed feelings about it than I used to. This was like one of my favorite books that I reread a lot, but it's interesting reading it now. Guys, okay, so I'm on page 92, starting to really get into it, and then they go and throw in stuff that I'm just like, oh gosh, really? So there's this whole thing where he changes her schedule without telling her, and she's upset about it, and she's like, you don't have any right to change my schedule. And he says, as a matter of fact, he began quietly, as your husband, I have every right. Knowing how correct he was, Shelby's shoulders slumped in defeat. Guys, no, just no. Okay, anyway, so it's like the little stuff like this, like in general, there's like cute elements to the romance, but it's the little stuff about like gender roles and like what women are supposed to be that I'm just like, oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm on page like 118. The book is going really quick. So the big thing that just happened is she gave the prince a haircut, and that seems to have been quite a sensual thing. She was cutting his hair and he was watching her quirk her lips while she cut his hair. And he didn't have a shirt on, so there was that. Anyway, so this leads to her doing some thinking about, like, if there's going to be physical intimacy in their marriage, which up to this point there has not been, and what about his needs? The Bible commands husbands and wives to come together so as not to fall into temptation. If your husband needs you physically, you need to be prepared for that. It is kind of what she's thinking to herself. So, yeah. Oh, it's so interesting, guys. Hey guys, so I thought I would do a quick update. And, I read about half of this last night. I'm about to like get ready for bed and I'll probably read a little bit more tonight. But it was really interesting and ended up sparking quite a long conversation on Voxer with a few of my booktube friends. So yeah, it's interesting. I was chatting a little bit with my friend Mara over at Books Like Whoa because she actually did a master's thesis partly on Christian romance, and kind of her perspective, which I think is an interesting one, is that books like this are really using the romance part as a vehicle for like preaching, which I think is kind of an interesting perspective. So let me know what you guys think about that. Anyway, I'm going to get ready for bed, and then I'm going to read a little bit more. All right, so Shelby finally shows that she's got a little bit of a backbone. Of course, it has nothing to do with her relationship with the prince, but it's still pretty satisfying to see. She's been volunteering at this retirement center, and she basically stands up to them and tells them they need to start actually preparing good food in the kitchen instead of cutting corners by giving crappy food to their elderly patients. Okay, guys, so this book, oh my god, I feel bad because I feel like I always stop and want to talk when I get to the parts that I'm like, what? Because some of it's fine. Okay, so I'm on page 174. The book's like 300 pages. They're finally connecting a little bit. They sat near each other on a picnic blanket. Like, keep in mind they've been married for like months, right? And he like asked her, is your skin as soft as it looks? Are you afraid for me to find out? So like very, you know, like, okay, anyway, it's kind of funny. So now she's having this conversation with her mother. Hey guys, I just like, okay, so I'm gonna read this to you. And I just feel like undertones of what this says about women and like female sexuality is like kind of problematic. Asks her mom, is father ever interested in you, you know, in that way, and you're not interested right then? What do you do? And her mother says, well, if I'm tired, I simply tell him and we plan another time. If not, I get interested as soon as I can. If I feel irritated, I see that as a sin. I confess it and work to give myself to my husband selflessly. Not an easy task at times, but always worth it. Okay, so this really sort of posits sexuality as being something that is male-centered in terms of like men being primarily interested in it, and even like with Shelby's character, like it's posited that way, that like the man is going to be the one interested in physical intimacy, and it's just something that the woman needs to like selflessly give of herself, rather than it being something that like should come also from a place of her own desire. I don't know. I mean, maybe the author wouldn't exactly put it that way, but that's like kind of the message that this is sending. Obviously, hey, this was written in like the 90s, but like there's also this thing where I'm like a little on the fence about it. If you feel irritated, should you feel like you then have to have sex with your spouse just because you think that like it's what you're required to do, even if in that moment you don't really want to? Like, is that actually consent? It's like a little bit fuzzy. Is that healthy for a sex life or for a marriage? I don't know. I'm sure people do this. I mean, like, you know, if you look at the stats on how many women fake orgasms in long-term relationships, I guess so, but like in the long run, it's not going to do anything good for your sex life. I don't know, guys. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to keep reading. It's really funny. There's like some very low-key innuendo here talking about clothing and shopping and stuff. Shelby says, what size are you? Nikolai laughs, large, Shelby, very large. Oh my god, guys, seriously? Someone's asking her how things are at the palace. She says, oh, just fine. The prince is meeting with the council today, as are the king and the king regent. Oh, so what do the ladies do on those days? Because clearly the queen or the princess or people aren't going to have anything to do with politics or running the country or care about what the council's talking about, obviously. Oh my god. Okay, so we're back to more of this sort of problematic genderization of sexuality in ways that are, like, I have problems with. And I think it just, like, gives wrong ideas about what's normal for girls. She's, like, reading the Bible about husbands' and wives' bodies belonging to each other and whatever. And she says, it seems we have an obligation to each other. I can't say I feel tempted at this point, but maybe it's different for Nikolai. And she says her husband's been married already. He knew all about intimacy. Most of it was still a mystery to Shelby, but this one point was clear. Men viewed such things differently than women. Guys, I mean, the problem with this is, right, is like it creates this concept. It's normal for men to be interested in sex and not normal for women to be particularly interested. Instead, it's something they do as like a service. And there's so much wrong with that. Oh my god, you guys! Like, I clearly did not realize how insane this was when I was a teenager. So like literally they go from having like never even kissed each other. He just basically tells her at some point that he wants her to think about including intimacy in their relationship. So she thinks about it, and like 6 weeks later she like comes in the middle of the night. They've never kissed each other or anything, and it just goes from that to like them sleeping together. She was amazed at his gentle touch and found herself smiling up at him. I should have known you would be nice. Like, guys, for real, like, can you not just like kiss your wife first? Can we not like have some, I mean, I don't know. Like, it's so weird. Like, that, yeah, it's not. Why would that be? And like, I don't know. Okay. Well, now her mother is buying her conservative lingerie and asking her if she thinks her husband will like them, which is super awkward. Like, who wants to talk about that with your mom? Like, seriously? I don't know. I think that's weird. So they have a conversation about Shelby having, like, irregular menstrual cycles and how they're difficult for her and stuff, which, like, that's cool. Normalizing periods in a romance novel and having a discussion between characters about them.
Okay, so I'm on page 240. It's really late. I need to go to bed. But guys, their communication is so terrible. Like, they don't talk to each other. Her husband just found out that she's pregnant from his in-laws. And then does he go confront her about it? No, he says, don't tell her that I know. It has to come from her. It's like the worst communication ever.
There was a car accident and a miscarriage, and guys, I do not love that a miscarriage was being used as a plot device to get the couple to actually talk to each other. Guys, so I finished the book this morning. I just finished reading the epilogue where, of course, you know, they have 4 children. She's overjoyed when her husband offers to change the baby's diaper for her, and they're talking to their 12-year-old son about going to Bible school. Okay, final thoughts. This was like a 5-star, or I guess what I would call a 6-star read for me when I was a teenager. Now I would probably put it at like 2.5 or 3 stars. It's easy to read, and there are parts of it that I like, but it's very, very preachy, like very heavy-handed with the preachiness. It takes up a lot of space, like more than I would prefer. Some of the stuff with gender roles and like these ideas about women, like I'm just not a fan of. So I gotta think about like what I'd rate it exactly, but it's gonna be like a 2.5, 3-star book. So yeah, this was like a very interesting experience. It's very readable, so like I get why I read it and reread it so much to some extent, but reading it with perspective now, definitely a different experience. So I have 2 other Lori Wick books on this TBR list, so we're gonna see how that goes. If I were to guess right now, I would say that probably Francine Rivers is going to be the best of the bunch, but we will see. I have a feeling that one might age better than the others. Hey guys, so because I want to actually like make some progress on this video, I am going to start my next book. Look at me reading. I'm going to read the one that I'm probably least excited to read, partly because it's super short. So this is Don't Die My Love by Lurlene McDanial, and it is only like 250 pages, less than... Okay, so it starts off super boring. I know it's about to get melodramatic, but it's like a teen girl with a boyfriend who's a football player, which, like, I could care less about. I think, like, the football player boyfriend ends up getting cancer or something like that. I think that's what ends up happening. This main character girl is super annoying. I'm sure she's gonna have a character arc of, like, personal growth, but so her dad is the football coach, and so he's like, don't go spoiling my prize quarterback and making him soft. Julie knew that would be impossible. Luke had a muscular physique to die for, made harder by the playing season plus hours of daily weight training in the gym. The only soft thing about Luke is me, she said, with a flounce of her blonde hair. So she's flouncing her blonde hair. Oh my gosh, you guys. It's like so ridiculous. But I'm sure she's gonna have like an arc of character growth because her boyfriend's like gonna die, and she's gonna have to learn that like there are things in life that matter more than flouncing your hair. So they're talking about how colleges are sniffing around him, and then it says, Football was Luke's only chance to make it into college. So is he literally like a dumb jock? Is that what we're getting? Like the dumb jock and the dumb blonde girlfriend? Like we're starting with these stereotypes? All right, I guess I spoke too soon. We're getting some backstory on Luke now. And while it is still kind of like typical tropes, it's not quite what I said. His dad died in the steel mills when he was 8, and his mom was struggling to raise him alone. He was always in trouble, solving his problems with his fists and football, and her father's belief in him as a player saved him from growing up in the juvenile detention center. So, bad boy made like quasi-good by football, apparently. So this is my question then, is like, if he gets sick, like how is his mom gonna pay for like medical bills? Because that's an issue. And this was written in like 1995 too, so particularly a problem. It's interesting. So this just sort of dates the book, I think, a lot. Is there's this discussion where she's arguing with her mom about whether she as a junior should be applying to colleges already, and her mom like saying, you know, your grades are good, you could get into any college you want. Of course she wants to wait for her boyfriend, but this is the thing, like the idea that like having good grades makes it easy to get into most colleges is like so not true anymore for students. But like I said, like, mid-90s, guys. Anyway, it's interesting. One thing I will say about this is it's actually pretty good so far. Like, I think maybe these are better than I remember. Also, I'm curious to see in comparison with the last book I read, because there's a mention of her going to church, but I'm wondering if this is going to be something where maybe it'll do a good job of weaving spirituality into the book without being like overly preachy and heavy-handed. Anyway, I don't know. I'm like not very far in yet, but curious to see how that goes. Okay, I'm actually pretty impressed with this, guys. Like, they have good communication. I mean, they're a long-time couple, but like they're communicating well with each other. They're apologizing when they mess up and get overly upset about stuff. They're addressing the issue of like money and medical expenses being an issue. He doesn't know yet that there's anything seriously wrong, but he knows something's up and then he should go to the doctor again, but doesn't want his mom to have to pay for it. Like, this is actually pretty good. It's like a good relationship, which how often do you see that depicted that way in YA? Like, it's really okay. Another line that kind of dates this book a bit. She says, Julie thought Luke's mother was attractive, even if she was on the heavy side. Like, nobody would put that in a book today. But they are on their way to the doctor finally, because he's been sick with flu-like symptoms and swollen glands that isn't going away. So they're finally going back to see what's up. Things are about to get real, guys. Oh, guys. Yeah, crazy. So they're sending them to a hospital in Chicago, not in their town, because they don't have the right equipment. And it's like the day before a dance. So like things are just about to turn into a crazy whirlwind. Like, oh, guys, so intense. So he just got diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, a really rare type of cancer in the lymph system. And it's really interesting because like it's emotionally resonant, but it also has a lot of medical information that, you know, feels like it's probably realistic. Like, cancer is fairly rare even among younger people, but I do feel like it probably does some good of educating you about what it's like. This is probably why I think I went through a phase where I was always like paranoid that I was going to end up getting cancer. It was probably because I read so many books by Lurlene McDaniels that I thought that like it was more common than it actually is. But anyway, yeah, you know, this one has been a pleasant surprise so far. I'm on, what am I on? I'm on page 58. And it's actually pretty good. Okay, so I expected some melodrama in this book. I'm getting a little bit of melodrama, but I've got to be honest, I feel for the girl. She's like crying into her black taffeta dress that she was supposed to wear to the dance that they couldn't go to because he was, you know, had to go to the hospital, and she buries her face in the fabric and is crying. Somehow the tear stains seemed appropriate. The dress would wear the watermarks forever, the symbol of the lost innocence of her life, of the cruel and bitter upheaval in Luke's. The dress was a fantasy. I mean, it's like pretty melodramatic, but like also I feel for her. Like, that's really hard. Your longtime high school boyfriend has cancer. Like, yeah. And did I mention all of this is happening right around Christmas, which is like makes this particularly sad? So the next line says, on Christmas Day, Luke's hair began to fall out. Ho, 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 he said without mirth. Yeah,
I'm on page 89. There was a really sweet ceremony where all the guys on the football team like shaved their heads in solidarity with her boyfriend who's going through chemo. So that was like very nice. This has been a pleasant surprise. I was least looking forward to reading this, but like it's actually pretty good. Oh, it's so emotional. So he finished a round of chemo and things were looking good, but then he went in for a scan and they discovered a tumor, and so now he's got to go through radiation therapy. Like, guys, it's rough. I remember being a teenager and things being super emotional like this. So she's got kind of a difficult relationship with her mom. I think her mom doesn't love the fact that she's really wrapped up in her high school boyfriend, which, like, as an adult now I understand. So they have kind of a fight about why she's not applying for colleges yet. And you know, she says, I thought maybe thinking about college would take your mind off Luke. Thinking about your future should be a fun thing. My future? You still don't get it, do you, Mother? Without Luke, I don't have a future. Without Luke, I don't even want one. Oh, man, it's so dramatic. But, like, you know, teen feels, guys. They're real. So I'm on page 124. Luke is kind of pushing her away. And then her mom, like, seems to have sort of set her up by getting her a job at a library where there's this, like, good-looking older boy working there. It's, like, clear that her mom doesn't like the fact that she's so invested in this relationship. Guys, they're so sweet, and they're such good communicators. Like, they're finally talking, and he's telling her that, like, he's scared that he's not going to get better. I want you to have a regular life. I love you, and if I love you, I should want what's best for you, and you didn't sign up for having a sick boyfriend. Like, they're so sweet, guys. They're like, they have such a good relationship. But she's like, no, I want to be there for you. Gosh, guys, this is so funny. The stuff that like really dates this, because remember, this is mid-90s, so this is like not quite pre-internet, but pre-internet being widespread and definitely pre-social media. So they're going together to stay with his uncle in California for a month in the summer, now that like he's in remission, at least for the time being. And so she's like, oh, how are you gonna know what he is? And he pulls out a physical photograph. He was like, oh yeah, he sent this to my mom at Christmas, and he has a picture of me too. Like, oh my gosh, like the issues that you wouldn't have these days. You'd probably know what people look like from their social media profiles, or you'd like call them on your phone. So it's kind of nice. There's like some low-key discussion of, you know, God not running the world in a way that's necessarily fair, letting him talk about his feelings or even his fear of dying or how he feels about it, even if it's uncomfortable for her. This is just like a really good nuanced book, and like tries to get out how to maybe be there for people who are going through stuff like that. It's so sweet. He just gave her like a promise ring, basically saying that he wants to marry her and that he'll one day buy her an engagement ring. They're super sweet. They have such a sweet relationship. It says, knowing you want to marry me someday gives me more to look forward to than anything else ever could. Even more than playing football. Football's only a game. You are real life. How sweet is that? I love it. All right, so I'm on page 204, and you know, like, things can never stay good. Told everyone he went to his checkup and actually skipped it and then collapsed during a football game, and it looks like something's up, so. Yep, so the cancer is back, and this time it's in his bone marrow, and of course he has a rare blood type, so the only possible hope is a bone marrow donor, if he can find one. Otherwise, yeah, he's probably gonna die. Oh, it's really sad, and we're like near the end of the book, guys. Oh my god, you guys, it's like so sad. It's like, so it's the final football game of the season, and he's there in a wheelchair. All of the players are stopping and removing their helmets in front of him, and like, it's just really, these are like super emotional books. Like, I'm getting like all teary. I remember sobbing over her books. They're very emotional. I don't usually pick up stuff like this, but oh my gosh, you guys, it's so sad. I didn't think I was gonna get emotional reading this book, but I totally am. He ended up having a tumor, and about before he went into surgery, he told her, no matter what the outcome is, I'll wait for you in heaven, and then he died in surgery. Oh my gosh, I'm like totally crying. Oh my god, I did not expect to like actually get emotional reading these again, but like, because I don't like cry reading books that often, maybe partly because I don't pick up books that'll make me cry, but like, it's so sad. God, you guys, like, dude, this is like so emotional. No one, whew. Okay, so I just finished it. Oh man,
And it like deals with kind of her going through grief and what that's like. And then like a few months after his death, it turns out that in the ground where they were building a new football stadium, he had planted tulips that spelled out "I love you." Oh my god. Guys, I don't usually do this. It's so sad. Okay, I'm trying to compose myself. Color me surprised, but this is really, really good. Like, I think this is gonna be like a 4.5, 5-star read. I was not expecting it. I really wasn't. But like, it is a really, really good book. Yeah, I recommend it. Yeah, like there's parts of it that are a little melodramatic, and there's definitely parts of it that feel dated, but it's like so emotionally resonant and well written. And this is, I think, a great example of spirituality being woven in a way that's subtle and not overdone. Okay. Book 2 was like way more of a success than I had anticipated. Hello guys, and welcome to 2019. Happy New Year. It is January 2nd, and I am getting ready to start my next book in this series. I'm going to be starting with Lori Wick's The Hawk and the Jewel. I'm in the mood for it. Quick update, I've decided that I'm only going to read this book in the series, the first in the series, instead of 2 of the books in the series, because this is getting to be a very long video. So this will be the first of my final 3 books. I'm excited. This one is a historical romance set in the early 1800s. So I had forgotten, like, so this is just like the premise of this is kind of a problem. Yikes. The premise of the story is that this English man was on a trip in some made-up country, Darhabar. While he was there, his wife died and his daughter disappeared. And so now it's like been 13 years later, and it turns out that the daughter's been the ward of the emir, the sultan, whatever, the ruler of this made-up country, where of course he has like concubines and slaves and like thought her mother, before she died, was beautiful, and if she hadn't been close to death, would have kept her for himself. And I'm like, oh boy. Yikes. Yeah, so, and if I'm remembering correctly, which I'd kind of forgotten, when she's eventually found and brought back to England, there's this whole thing of her having to like become a Christian and turn from her like heathen ways and wildness of her upbringing in this heathen court of foreigners who had slaves and concubines, and like, oh boy, I had kind of forgotten this was the plot of it. It's pretty problematic. Yeah, like not the kind of thing that would probably be published today, at least in like a mainstream thing, I hope. So even though her father came asking for her, the emir lied about having ever seen the child because he was so taken with her and didn't feel guilty about just giving the dead wife's body to her husband and keeping the kid. And she has violet eyes. Who has violet eyes? Like, is that actually a thing, or is that just something they put in books to make people like special snowflakes? While she's living in this made-up country, she basically dresses like Jasmine from Aladdin, essentially. Like, and then now she's being all upset about the fact that even though she's 14, she doesn't have any curves. I think she ends up actually being older than they think, but like they think that she's 14 or something. Still, it's gonna be like super young. I may end up having a lot of problems with this, guys. It's been a while. All right, let's do this. You know what else they do in this barbaric heathen place? Child marriage. One of the other daughters of the ruler is 14 and already married and with a child. Like, it's a made-up country that's loosely based on Muslim areas. Like, is that even something that they had in the I don't know. The guy who is picking her up on the ship, unbeknownst to her, and taking her back to England, Brandon, is her brother's brother-in-law, whatever that makes them. I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering right, that he ends up being the love interest later on, and she's like 13 and he's 23. To be fair, he doesn't have any romantic interest in her and sees her as a sister until she's like 20 or something, and maybe not even 20, but still a little weird. I don't know how I'm gonna feel about it, but yeah. Anyway, we'll see. Okay, can we just talk about how ridiculous this is? She's dealing with like the newness of having just lost her essentially family who raised her and having to learn all these new things and be around new people, and it says she felt like she was heading towards depression, but then she realized some of her restlessness for the last few months had abated since she'd been like, Guys, it's just kind of ridiculous. Of course, she's dealing with serious trauma, and that is just like not even addressed, as if like, oh, but you know, something inside her just knows that she's headed to her real family and everything's okay. Like, no, like she would have PTSD. I don't know. So I realize that it's supposed to be depicted as if it's just mostly a brotherly affection, but knowing that he's going to be the love interest later, it is kind of like cringy that there's so many things of like him comforting her and her leaning her head on his shoulder and him kissing her forehead, and I'm like, but I don't know, she's 13 and he's 23 and they've never known each other. It's kind of weird. Yeah, this is like going to be an ongoing problem. It's pretty uncomfortable, to be honest, because he is like essentially at this point parenting her, basically, which is like a very weird relational thing to start out with, even if like there's years between. I don't know. I'll keep reading to see where it ends, but then there's also like little stuff. It's just kind of creepy, you know, like starting it at this age, this whole thing of him like helping her with her hair and the effect looking nice and highlighting her cheekbones, and like it's just really weird. I don't love this choice. It's like there's a lot of weird power dynamics going on here. I mean, she's like literally a child. I guess this is the thing, like even if it's supposed to just be like a harmless relationship at this point, like you know that later on it's going to be romantic, the authorial voice putting hints towards that, and it's creepy. So I'm about 70 pages into the book. We're starting to get to the part that gets into the more heavy-handed spirituality again, which I'm realizing is probably a theme in books by Wick. Sunny was raised in a heathen household where they don't believe in God, and so clearly there's a big push to have her change her religious beliefs and become a Christian, and so that is a big plot line through the story, and so some of that conversation is beginning, along with some kind of complicated discussions of biblical gender roles in marriage. The way it's being handled is not the most archaic thing that I've ever heard, but still is definitely within the traditional thing of like husbands are the head of the household sort of thing, although they try to say that doesn't make women lesser, however you want to take that. So oh my god, guys, like I forgot what was in here. Okay, so it's her first night in London and she's being really stoic because apparently that was how she was raised, and so Brandon, the guy, thinks that she needs to cry, and when she refuses he pinches her to make her cry because he thinks it'll be good for her. It says, Brandon saw no help for it. He stepped close to her, and before she could guess his intentions, he reached for her forearm and pinched a small piece of skin with enough force to leave a bruise. Guys, like, that is not okay. On so many levels, like, that's really, really not okay. Hey guys, so I thought I would give you a quick update. I am about a third of the way through the Hawk and the Jewel. I am about to get ready for bed, and then I'm probably going to read a little bit more tonight. Yeah. One thing I will say for her books is they're very readable. They're very easy to read, but they're also quite problematic. This one is, anyway. Yeah. We're getting more discussions of God's plan for husbands being head of the household, but women shouldn't be chattel. I'm always like really uncomfortable with all of the like biblical gender role stuff and the way it's usually handled. And also there's like the weird thing of, because she was like a very young child of her parents, and so she has a niece and nephew who are a couple years older than her, and her nephew has a crush on her, which is also kind of weird. Like there's a lot of weird romantic things going on. She's still 14 at this point, so that's where we're at. She's meeting all of her family that she's never met before during Christmas. Oh, guys, okay, so again, girl is 14, right? And there's a couple of boys that are interested in her who are 5 years older than her. So 19, right? And when one of them is writing her poetry, they're, you know, trying to show interest in her. Instead of doing something to stop them, her brother and sister, who she's living with, who are her guardians, are basically just tell her she's being silly at disliking it, and tell her they'll say something to them to get them to tone it down a little bit, but she should just try to be kind. Like, just be kind. Like, the girl is 14 years old. She is still a child. And also, even in terms of the time period, it's kind of ridiculous because there's no way that they would probably, I don't know. There's so much sexualization of this child in this book. It's really, really uncomfortable. And there's multiple characters doing it. There's so many inappropriate romantic interests in her. And she, yeah. Oh, man, this I actually remembered from the first time that I read this. So Sunny is developing a bit of a figure, but she's still quite small and not full-figured. Her niece, I guess, tells her, oh, that's all right. A smaller figure is easier to work with clothes. Sunny thought of Chelsea, who was tall and very full-busted, and nodded, seeing for the first time that Holly was probably right. Chelsea and Holly were able to wear very few rounded necklines, and when they did wear them, the necklines were very high in order to be modest. There wasn't a style that Sunny couldn't wear, and she suddenly found herself hoping she would have Heather's nice shape. Cover the boobs, guys. Cover the girls. This is the thing. You know, like, there's so much emphasis on modesty and gender roles. There's also, you know, periodically stuff on spirituality, which, like, if it was just that, I wouldn't be bothered. The thing, though, with this book that really bothers me is the fact that we're, like, sexualizing a 14-year-old girl with these, like, much older men and in situations that she's uncomfortable with. Hey guys, so it is January 7th. It's taking me a little while to get through this. I've been reading other things, but I thought I would get on here. Apologies, I don't know how coherent my last few clips reading this book have been. I'm a little more than halfway through. I haven't really updated you in a little while. I have some thoughts, and I think reading it when I'm tired, I maybe am not as coherent in my thoughts. Excuse my 2-year-old in the background is making noise playing. Here's the thing with this book, and this is probably something that should be a longer discussion, but I'm finding between this and in The Princess, which is another book by Wick, is we get this very particular vision of what women are supposed to be, and it's quite a problematic one. You know, it's funny, like I said, like, I identify as a Christian, and I was talking to my husband the other night, and I was just saying how it's interesting to me that when you actually read the Bible, like, a lot of the female heroines of the Bible, who are really seen as these amazing women, would probably be Slytherins if they had Hogwarts houses. Like, they're very cunning, and that is not something that is true in these books. In these books, women who are too wild and strong-headed, you know, part of their story is, well, finding faith, but that plus the men in their lives sort of taming them and them learning to be more submissive and less wild. And, you know, I think this is sort of a similar situation, and I have some real problems with that, and I don't really even think that it's what women are asked to be, or what's raised up as what womanhood should be if you're looking just at, like, biblical stories of women. So anyway, I don't know. This is like this is a longer discussion, and it's one that I might turn this into a whole discussion video on its own about this, because I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about it, but I thought I would just hop on here and tell you guys, like, I have a real problem reading this now with her vision of what women should and shouldn't be, and that Sunny's journey is really about not being a heathen, not being so wild, learning to be kinder to men, even men that are making her uncomfortable, but being polite. Like, there's such an emphasis on that, and it's a real problem. So anyway, I don't know how many times I'm gonna update you guys as I'm continuing this, but I've got less than half of the book left. I'm like 180 something pages in. So there you go. Hey guys, so it is January 8th. I'm at the playground with my kids. Got my book with me. Got less than 100 pages left, and yeah, I was definitely right. There was like this definite arc of her headstrongness and doing all these crazy things being linked to the fact that, you know, she needs to find God, and like, which, you know, like, as, I don't know, it's the direct linking of that I have a little more of a problem with. And then there's this whole arc of Brandon realizing he has feelings for her. She's like 16, maybe 17. I mean, I think they try to offset it by the fact that when she debuts, she receives proposals from men during that time period who are like in their 50s or something, but still, it's just, it's icky. I'm not a fan, and I'm not that much a fan too of this idea that like the way women should be, especially when they're being spiritually correct, is sweeter and more docile. Yeah. Okay, so I don't have a whole lot left. Guys, it's just, there's so many things with this book that drive me crazy. Brandon is just like completely being a jerk. So not only is there a problem with the fact that like everybody thinks it's completely fine, he's interested in her even though she's like 16 years old and 10 years younger than him and whatever, but he's also just like totally a jerk to her, and like they don't really have the healthiest relationship, and I feel like turning it into a healthy romantic relationship, if the age thing wasn't a factor, would be a problem. Pretty close to the end, there are just so many things wrong with this on so many different levels. It's really terrible. Okay, I'm done. Yay, finally. Yeah, thus far this is definitely the most problematic of the books that I've read. I think it's probably gonna be a 1 star for me. Well, hello. I haven't seen you in a while. I know, it's been a busy couple months, but yes, I am finally reading the next book, Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. I will let you know what I think. So yeah, we're doing this. Will I finish in February? Who knows, but I will at least get 1 book closer. This is one of 2 that I have left to do. Let's get reading. Okay, so I just finished reading the prologue, which is, it's fairly long, and I'm just remembering Francine Rivers is a really good writer. There's a reason that she's one of the big names who is continuing to publish. So this is how far I'm at. It's like 40-something pages. If you guys are familiar with Redeeming Love, it's a retelling of the book of Hosea in the Bible, which is about a prophet who marries a prostitute and loves her and has children with her. And so this like is loosely based on that. It's set in Gold Rush era California. The prologue is the childhood of our main character, and it is really difficult to read, of her being neglected and her mother dying and then her being sold to a man who has a thing for little girls. And yeah, it's pretty rough. So yeah, I've just finished the prologue, and then we move into the part where she ends up meeting the man who will fall for her and kind of rescue her out of this life she's been forced into as a child. So it's very, very well written. Hey guys, so I am about 82 pages in, and it's really interesting reading this. I think because there's been so much more discussion that I've heard more recently about having a more nuanced depiction of sex workers, and this is probably not that. I mean, there's like discussion of her being a soiled dove, and I mean, like, I don't know, it's interesting. Although I do think there might be a little bit of balance in that some of the other girls in the brothel that she's in seem to have a more positive relationship to what they're doing. But for her, it's something associated with trauma from her childhood. So I feel like I could be okay with this. But regardless, it's interesting. I had forgotten the way that this starts. We've met the male love interest. So Michael Hosea basically hears God telling him, "This is the woman I want you to marry." And so he goes and pays to go to the brothel several times in a row to just talk with her, to try to convince her that she should come away with him and marry him, which, like, on its face, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, why would you just randomly like leave and marry some dude that's like, I don't know. It's like, I get her reticence regardless of what he's offering. So I'm curious to see the way this wraps up. Like, I know they end up together at the end, but I can't really remember how it happens. She escaped her abuser from childhood and is now with another madam in a pretty abusive, controlling situation. Anyway, I'm gonna keep reading. It's interesting. Okay, so this is a really annoying thing that I hate, and granted, this was written a while ago, but still, is the evil woman Duchess is described as being overweight and fat and grotesque, whereas, of course, our main character is described as being slim, and like, you know, why are we doing this? Like, why is fatness associated with evil? That's definitely a thing in this book, and it's annoying. I had really forgotten the details of how this story happened, so I'm about 100 pages in, and after getting severely beaten by the sort of bodyguard enforcer at the brothel, she is taken by Michael Hosea, and he marries her and has taken her to his house. And now things begin. So I'm on page 167. Sorry, I just like washed my face and put moisturizer on, but I have really mixed feelings about this story and about the development of the relationship between Michael Hosea and our main character. Like, sometimes I am really uncomfortable with the way that he treats her and handles things with her, where it's like very alpha male and not great, but other times he's really gentle and thoughtful, like, and I think his heart is in the right place, but also as a whole, like, it's a little bit of an issue, like, trying to push a woman into staying with you and staying married to you when she was, like, mostly unconscious when you married her in the first place. I don't know. So I don't know. I can't decide how I feel about this. I have very, very mixed feelings, although she is slowly opening up to him. The other part of this that I'm hoping to be proved wrong by, it's like I said, it's been a long time since I read this, so I can't remember, but there is a lot of discussion in the book of his sexual response to her, even though he like puts off actually consummating the marriage until just recently they finally consummated for the first time, because he wants it to be about an emotional connection and her being open in her heart and not just like not caring because of her prostitution background. The thing is, when they did finally consummate it, it was like you get this thing that like maybe there's some emotional thing opening up in her a little bit, and the physical pleasure part of it is really all directed at the male thing. So I'm just hoping this isn't something where that's going to continue, and it's going to be this sort of continuing on of this idea that sexual physical pleasure is really about men, and for women it's all about the emotional side of things, because I think that's been kind of a dangerous and problematic thing that's like popped up in Christian fiction over the years. So maybe not. Maybe we will get some more nuance, and that would be wonderful, but it's making me nervous, so we'll see. Guys, his brother-in-law is such a jerk. Such a jerk. He came back, he'd been grieving the loss of his wife, he went and off like panning for gold and drinking, and he's back. He recognized the girl as having been a high-end prostitute, and now he's being a complete asshole about it. Yeah. I think he maybe tries to like force himself on her or something, and he feels like righteous about it because he thinks he needs to chase her off for his like pure brother-in-law or whatever. But it's, yeah, he's a jerk. I am 200 pages in. I think I'm gonna like finish the chapter I'm on and then call it a night. But gosh, it's like really compelling. It's crazy. She runs away and the brother-in-law is willing to take her to town, but he basically rapes her, and then she ends up back in prostitution. Michael comes back, finds her in the act of that, and brings her back home again. And it's like, guys, it's so intense. So trigger warnings, I guess there is like rape in here and stuff, but yeah, no, it's good. It's intense. Hey guys, so it is February 20th. I'm continuing to read. I'm on page 219, and I wanted to say I am pleasantly surprised. There's been a discussion of the importance of sexual pleasure being mutual and that it is wrong, this idea that women aren't actually supposed to enjoy anything. So like there's like a nice little discussion in here, and there also seems to be some good understanding by the guy of the fact that she probably has PTSD and trauma that needs to be healed from if she's going to move in that direction. So like this is actually being handled really well. I'm happy with it. So there's kind of this like one-off side conversation between the two of them where he talks about growing up with a father who was a slave owner, and some of the like messed up things that his father did. So that's kind of hard to read and like randomly thrown in here. I'm on page 289. There's a lot of really rough stuff in this book, like a lot of trigger warnings. There's some discussions of incest that took place. Yeah, a lot of rough stuff she's been through. Also forced abortion and sterilization. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And you really see her dealing with the trauma and the fear of love and the fear of trust. And she's finally starting to fall for him and then runs away again because it freaks her out and she can't deal with it. Like, it's interesting as a depiction of trauma and PTSD and healing eventually. So anyway, yeah, it's intense, but it's good. It is February 21st. I am drinking some wine and doing some reading. It has been a busy week, so if I'm not updating you as much on this one as previously, it's because my kid doesn't have school, and so my week has been busier, but I'm making a lot of progress. I might actually finish this up tonight. It's good. I think when I read this the first time, it was definitely a 5-star read. I don't anticipate that being true, but it's not bad. Like, I think it does a lot of things pretty well. It's not perfect. It definitely has some issues. And there's some like unbelievable elements to it. Right now I'm at this point where like it's hard to believe that Michael is being so kind and understanding with his brother-in-law, who basically like raped his wife when she was running away one of those times, and he doesn't know it was rape exactly, but he knows they were together, and he's like super kind. And it's like, I don't know how realistic it is, but I feel like he's supposed to be kind of like a god figure in some ways, or similar to God. I don't know how I feel about all of that, but like he's kind of like the perfect man is the way I think he's being drawn. So like, yeah, but I like the way that they're handling the trauma and the PTSD, and the power of love over time to potentially bring healing. There's like good stuff. So I don't know, I have mixed feelings. Anyway, I'm gonna do some reading. I will update you guys a little bit more later. So there's this very sweet 16-year-old girl that has kind of befriended the main character, and she has a thing for Paul, who is the brother-in-law and rapist, and I really hope he doesn't end up getting to marry her and like things are just let go. I feel like that is probably the kind of thing that this would do in terms of like forgiveness and stuff, but like it really bothers me, the idea of that being taken as lightly. Also, the fact that the girl's like 16. I mean, I guess people did get married back in the day, but like it's still pretty young. Guys. So I'm on page 363. Yes, Paul, the brother-in-law, is a complete jerk. Yeah, I don't know what's gonna come of that. And also there's like some issues coming up because the main character experienced forced sterilization when she was quite young, and I know her husband would love a child, and that's like quite a painful thing for them to deal with, and so there's that they're handling. And I think she maybe, even though she loves him, sees that maybe he would have been better off with somebody else. At least that's her feeling. So you know things are gonna go bad places before they get better. Well, guess who showed up again when she ran away this time? Yes, her childhood abuser. Great. I think I vaguely remembered that this happened. We're near the end of the book, so I think hopefully soon they will actually get together, her and Michael, and stay together. That would be great. One other thing I wanted to mention that I'm really not sure how I feel about is it's sort of posited in here that maybe her running away was intentionally something that God sort of pushed her towards doing so that she wouldn't make her husband into her God. Which, I don't know. That might be questionable theology, that would be necessary. Regardless, we're gonna keep reading. So I was totally right. The brother-in-law did end up marrying the other girl, and like, I'm kind of annoyed about it. I know it's supposed to be like a redemption arc, but I don't feel like any of his part in the things that he's done has been handled properly. So I don't love that. Guys, I finished. Yay. I'm really tired, but I finished. Yeah, I mean, the end part definitely gets a little bit preachier. It's fine, though. I mean, you kind of know that's a little bit of what you're getting. I don't know. What would I rate this? Like, probably 3.5 or 4 stars. It's pretty good. It's not perfect. It's got some issues, but compared to, like, the Lori Wick stuff, this is, like, a solid option, I would say. It's not a 5-star read anymore. But, yeah, this was good. I was expecting it to be a better choice, and I think it was. I think it does a lot of things pretty well. 4 stars. Yeah. Hey guys, it is March 24th. I just got out of the bath and started reading Silk by Linda Chaiken. This is the last book I'm reading for the video. I am 70 pages into it. It's 350 pages long. And so far it's been interesting. The first couple chapters are definitely clunky in terms of setting the stage and doing like info dumpy stuff, but then the story does start to hook you. I mean, like, and how well is it handled? It's a mix. Okay, so it follows this 16-year-old girl named Coral who is an heiress to her family's silk plantation in India. So of course we've got like colonialism, and so it's interesting. It says at the beginning of the book that the author of this book has a degree from a Bible college, and her husband do missions work in India, or at least did in 1993 when this was written. And so there's a lot of that deeply in here. There's a lot of like missionary stuff, I think, if I'm remembering right. At the beginning of the book, we see Coral, who's befriended a servant from a really low caste system, and the servant has become a Christian and is getting baptized, but then some like extremist Hindus kill her husband, and then she dies in childbirth and asks Coral to be the godparent to this child. But there's like some mysterious things about maybe where this woman and her husband were actually from, like if they were from a low caste or maybe they weren't. It's a little unclear. And then of course we have our hero Jace, who's like a colonel, I think, or something, and he's kind of gruff. Coral's been sick for a long time. She's young but determined to keep this child and raise him as a Christian. That's basically where we're at. So like, it's one of those things where like, you know, the premise is mixed. At least it's like being handled okay, that there's like not all the brown characters are evil. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not sure how to feel about it, but definitely I think the writing gets a little bit better once you get past the first couple chapters. So that's where I'm at the moment. I will update you guys as I keep reading. Good morning, guys. It is the next day. I've made just a little bit more progress in Silk. I thought I would do a quick update. My 2-year-old is singing If You're Happy and You Know It and listening to songs. So of course Coral has a pet elephant because sure, why not? Named Ronnie. Yeah, and time is passing. I don't understand why we always have these like 16-year-old heroines back in the day and everyone wants them to get married. Thankfully, I guess she's trying to be historically accurate, but then trying to like have her mom argue for letting her wait to get married till later. Anyway, I don't know. It's so interesting. Like, this is such a tricky time period because of the colonialism and the ways that it was these white people who were really making money off of things that were being grown in India. And then having Native Indians as servants, and then, you know, there's like children working on the silk farm and silk plantation, and I don't know. Anyway, so it's like, it's a mix, but like the writing's okay once you get past the first couple chapters. I'll keep going. Also, I wanted to say, we're getting a little bit of Jace Buckley, that's his name, Jace Buckley's backstory, and it's really tragic, and it's kind of just glossed over. Like, he was the illegitimate son of a pirate, and he saw his pirate be beheaded by like a Chinese warlord, and then was an opium slave, and then escaped, and then was living with like a Hindu mystic, and then got adopted at, like, as a teenager by some Englishmen in the military. Like, it's super crazy, and you get all of that in like a paragraph and a half. So, like, okay. But of course, this is his backstory for why he's emotionally closed off. And I mean, obviously the romance is gonna be something that's supposed to fix that, I guess. We'll see. Okay, so there's a scene. Jace and Coral's brother Michael, who are going into business together, are in China, and there is a Chinese guy who's about to behead his slave, and they're upset about it, at how horrific it is. I mean, here's the thing. It feels a little bit like a problem to me that during this time period where the British certainly had slaves and mistreated them, even more so in America, was during the time period that this book is set in the 1700s, that the, like, white sort of savior is getting all up in arms about the treatment, and the, like, people of color are the ones being painted as villains. Not to say that there wasn't atrocious things that happened in other places. It just feels out of balance, you know? I mean, yeah. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised, but it does. It feels out of balance. So I am on page 121. We are at the playground. Kids are hanging out and playing. See them back there? There's one of them. Where's the other one? You say hi? Just say. Anyway, so you get some interesting information about silk production, which I didn't realize how crazy it is and intense. It's kind of interesting and a little terrifying. But Jace Buckley and Coral met each other again after years. I think she's like 17 now. He's probably in his 20s. She's getting ready to adopt the child that she sort of became foster mother to. He's worried things are gonna go wrong, but isn't gonna stand against her. She's also has a lot of health problems, so that is where I'm at. So I made it to page 127, and we've passed another year, so we're really moving through time. I think our main character is 18 now, so I'll update you guys more later. I'm about to head to my first event of the week for the New York City Teen Author Festival, so I know this video is not about that, but maybe I'll throw in a couple of brief clips.
I'm Heidi Heilig, and my most recent book is called For a Muse of Fire. When I was trying to figure out how to write this book, I was inspired by a bunch of, it's like a kitchen sink sort of process. Like, I was inspired by, first and foremost, my own bipolar disorder. I wanted to write a high fantasy with a character that was bipolar.
My latest book is called The Tesla Legacy, so it has something to do with Nikola Tesla. I describe it as if Bruce Banner were a high school girl.
My book came out last year. It's called Anger is a Gift. I am happy to be the human disaster on this panel because, as it stands, I have never written my first draft of a book in the right genre. Ever. And I continue to have this problem even with future books that I'm writing. My first book was initially planned as the first in a science fiction dystopia. There were murder robots in the original. Wow. You'll say that they were bad. It wasn't that bad. I got an R&R, a rewrite and resubmit, in the middle of querying from an agent who is now actually my agent, who had told me that I wrote a great YA contemporary with this fantastic voice and character, and I'd also written this really complex, futuristic sci-fi, and I should choose which book I actually wanted to write and send him only one of them, which was devastating and very, very difficult. But I made the decision to change my book to contemporary. So Anger is a Gift is a contemporary YA. And I had the same problem with my second one that I submitted to, or gave to my editor, where it started off as horror and dystopia, and now it's magical realism fantasy.
Hey guys, so I had a really good time at the event from the New York City Teen Author Festival tonight. Went out with some people after. I'm doing some reading now. Where am I at? So I'm on page 139. You know, it's funny. I had forgotten how little interaction there actually is between these two characters in the first book. Like, often they're off doing other things. Like, right now he's on a ship, and like they've met each other twice for like brief times, and like this is where we're at. There's a lot more focus, I think. I can kind of see why I liked this so much, because I was really into international travel type stuff, and there's a lot of geography and a lot of culture and like things built into this, and definitely like a heavy sort of spiritual emphasis. So it's obvious, I don't know if it'll be all in this book, but like eventually what the character arc for Jace is going to be. He wasn't specifically raised religious, and apparently is secretly doing this thing where he's comparing the religious texts of Hinduism and Christianity and Islam to each other to kind of like survey the major world religions and see what he thinks about them. And clearly, like, I'm sure his arc is going to be to eventually become a Christian and then end up with a girl, because that seems to be like the way these things go. So yeah, anyway, it's interesting. Also, they're like trading in antiques with things like ivory carved elephants, like stuff that's totally illegal now. So I mean, I don't know, it's interesting. So her adoptive son was kidnapped, and she was told that they found his body dead, so that's pretty heavy. And then like her mom's response to her grief was like really trite about like, well, we can find peace because we know that he's in heaven, basically. I don't know. I mean, yes, but like in the moment that's not the most helpful. I don't know, I just didn't love that. And I should say, I'm pretty sure, based on what I remember, that it turns out that the boy isn't actually dead. And I don't know if it's in this book or if it's like later in the series, because it is the first of the trilogy. I think they end up finding out that he's still alive and there was some plot. I'm wondering now, like, how satisfying this first book in the trilogy is going to be, because, like, I don't know even that the romance develops much here. I don't know. It's, like, definitely more Christian historical fiction than it is romance, but it's fine. We're just gonna go with it. Hey guys, so it is March 26th. I'm making some progress on the book. I was too tired to update you again last night, but I'm getting through it. Where am I at? I am on page 207. Definitely her uncle is shaping up to be like the villain who's got all his own things he wants to do. I think he probably was behind getting Jem kidnapped, and now they're trying to make Coral out to look like she's just crazy because of grief and because of her illness, when really she's not, and she thinks that he might still be alive. Classic, right? Women are emotional and crazy. So anyway, so it's like, it's good. It's engaging. Like, the foundational part of it, I guess, is a problem, but it's also things that actually happened. So I'm like not sure what to do with that. So hopefully I can finish this maybe tonight, maybe. We'll see. Although I've got another event tonight. This week is like super crazy for me to be doing this, but I need to finish this video so you guys can get it. Okay, I'll update you more later. Yeah, her uncle is totally a creep. He's got all of these machinations and things that he's trying to do, and he's like burning letters and keeping correspondence from getting from each other. He's also trying to keep Coral away from Jace Buckley because he wants her to marry his nephew instead, so that he has more money and more control of the family plantations and everything. He's like very, very despicable. Easy to dislike him. And they're like basically keeping her drugged and asleep, thinking it's gonna help her get better and deal with the grief, but like she's having terrible nightmares, and like, yeah. I have a feeling this conclusion is not gonna be a satisfying one, like that I'm gonna feel like you need the whole trilogy, but it's fine. We're not gonna read the whole trilogy for this video. We'll see how this goes. Hey guys, so I'm continuing to read. It is evening. We'll see if I can finish this tonight. That would be great. I don't actually have that much left, like around 100 pages. Yeah, definitely the romance is not going to develop all that much in this book. Her uncle is horrible. They've like kept her drugged, and like the guy that her family wants her to marry, like, is probably nice enough, but he's like going along with her uncle's plans to the extent that he knows what they are, in ways that are kind of underhanded. Like, he knows that he clearly has some sense that there are some problematic things happening, and he's just going with it. It's like, I don't like him. Probably not supposed to. Also, we are getting a little bit of this trope of the like Christian version of Not Like Other Girls, where she like doesn't flirt and she mostly cares about like religious things, and like, you know, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. I'm like, at this point, it's like 3 stars, maybe 2.5, 3, something like that. I definitely think the author here is setting out to include a lot of church history, because there's a lot of major characters, at least within Protestant church history, talked about. William Wilberforce, who was a major force behind the abolishment of slavery in the UK, hymn writers and different people. So it's interesting, there's like a heavy focus on including them and discussions of various religious things, and specifically some of the theological things that were happening during the time period. So it's interesting, like, this isn't so much what I remembered it being. It is much more historical fiction with a little bit of romance in it. It's got this like slight mystery plot with a lot of Protestant church history. Yeah, it's funny. So like I put this on here because I was thinking, oh, it's like a 90s Christian romance, but like it's really not so much what this one is. So it's interesting. Anyway, okay, let's keep reading. Okay, so I'm on page 289. One thing I do appreciate about this is that it views female dreams outside of marriage and children as valid, which I think is great. Like, not something that, especially in Christian circles, was always something you saw. She has a sister who dreams of staying single and being a couturier, like fashion designer, at their silk house in London. And Coral is developing this dream of having a school in India for poor children. There is definitely sort of this white savior thing happening and a lot of problematic like colonialism things throughout, but I appreciate this validity of the breaking of some gender norms, although even their dreams are like pretty gendered, but yeah, so there's that. Also, she ran into Jace again. It's been a few years and they didn't recognize each other, which seems unlikely, but whatever, it's fine. Okay guys, I finished. And like I thought, everything is completely unresolved. Like, I like the beginnings of her relationship with Jace Buckley and the way that it's starting. I think it has potential. I like Coral as a character. I think she's got strength despite her sort of physical weakness, and I like seeing that. It's an interesting like vision, I guess, of feminine strength. I have some issues with like some of the sort of colonial aspects of the book, etc. I don't know, it's like 2.5, 3 stars. Yeah, I mean, but it's one of those things where really you need the entire trilogy to get anything to wrap up. Like, not much happens in book 1. I sort of wish there were a stronger plot arc, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I expected more out of it, but it was fine. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't perfect or great, but yeah. So that's it. Maybe we need a recap. Okay guys, so let's do a quick recap. It took me 5 months, but I read all the books. All 5 of these books. What did we learn? I do not have the same favorites that I did as a teenager. I am a very different person. I think too, this taught me a lot about maybe where some of my hangups over the years that I've had to work through have come from in terms of like gender and sexuality and stuff. It's been pretty interesting. So like, essentially, I have the most problems with Lori Wick. Like, both of these I rated very, very low. And it's funny because they were favorites that I reread. And now I'm like, so problematic. Redeeming Love and Silk were like not bad. I think Silk was the next one. Like, it wasn't horrible, but I think I gave it 2.5 stars. I didn't hate it, but there were some problems with it. I get why I liked it though. Like this, I get it, and it's not the worst thing. It's not like super terrible. Same with Redeeming Love. Like, I think I actually rated this reasonably high. Like, this one was fine. Again, some issues, but for what it is, it's okay. And clearly, like, the biggest success and surprise of this was Don't Die, My Love by Lurlene McDaniels. Yes, they are very emotional, and I thought it was pretty good. Although, since then, I've heard some people say some negative things about it that I'm like, it's fair. It's fair. So, I don't know what I, like, am I going to keep any of these books? No, I'm probably not. I'm going to unhaul all of them, I think. None of them are things that I loved enough that I want to keep them on my shelves. But this was a really interesting project. I did not intend for it to take 5 months, but that's what happened. Thank you for those of you who've stuck around with me through all of this. So I don't know, like, what the big takeaway here is. Definitely that 90s Christian romance. And I mean, I haven't read much of it recently, so I don't know. I feel like maybe some of this has changed, but especially in this time period, because all of these were written in the early 90s. There were very specific ideas about gender and sexuality and faith and how those things tied together. There were a lot of, like, really racist undertones to a lot of these, like things that weren't, like, overtly racist, but definitely a lot of racist subtext. So these are, like, you know, I mean, these are being written by mostly white women. Linda Chaiken, I don't know, she might not be, she's the only one who I'm not sure. She might be not white, but yeah, that's really interesting. So there you go. This was my project. I think it has been an interesting experience diving back into that part of my teenage years and seeing how far I have come since then. So talk to me in the comments down below. Thoughts, feelings. I don't know who all is going to watch this or what you're going to take away from it, but hopefully some of you found this to be interesting. And let me know if you'd be interested in seeing me do something like this again. I will not do this again, but this sort of thing where I take on a bigger project over a longer period of time. So that's it. Yeah, we made it. Finally, it's kind of weird. Now I gotta go finish editing this video so that you can see it, hopefully today, because I've been editing as I go. So enjoy. Question of the day. Are there books that you read and loved as a teenager that you think you would have really different feelings about if you read them now? For those of you who aren't still teenagers, because some of you might be, but I know a lot of my audience is closer to my age. So let me know, thoughts, feelings, all the things. Like, subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later.